I'll show you how to set up a tarp even on bare rock, right where you want it to be every time. Is that where the fire pit's gonna go, Bella? Right there? Right there? So as you can see, it's just total rock everywhere. So the first thing you're gonna wanna look for is poles. So you can use paddles. So if you're in like the Arctic, the high Arctic or something where there's no trees, you can use paddles instead of these poles that I'm gonna use. Or sometimes people bring kind of poles just for this purpose. But today I'm going to look for some dead tall branches or saplings, because that'll serve me better and we can get the height a little better. So I just cut down 2 saplings. The tarp we have is pretty large, so we should be able to get some headroom when we're sitting down. But this is what you're going to want to start with. We're going to sit here in front of the fire under the tarp, be able to cook. If we want, we can have a small fire under the tarp and a big fire on the other side for warmth. But essentially I want this to come close to the fire so we can sit and still cook. So to do that, I'm going to take the front of the tarp and just as a bit of a guide and put it along approximately where it will be. That's a good distance. Now, what I'm going to use is a heavy log. So if you're in an area where there's no trees, like the high Arctic or something, or you just can't access a heavy log, next best thing is a heavy rock or some of your actual camping gear that can be quite heavy. But I'm going to use a heavy rock and a big log in this instance, to secure down the back, because you could use pegs, but it's just bare rock, so we can't here. The front part is the tricky part, and that's where more heavy rocks, those saplings I cut, will come into play. Now that I have the back tied secured, I'm going to take the front, take one of my saplings, bring it up to the height you want, get some tension across the back, so you want the tarp, some tension there. Wrap it around. You don't have to tie a knot here. Just pull it through once. Just like that. And you bring it down to the rock or the heavy object over here. Then your other sapling comes in this corner, like this, and pull everything nice and tight so that there's tension on everything. That way it'll hold better. So now we got a nice space right in front of where our fire is. The tarp also catches a lot of the heat and keeps you warmer in here, which is nice. And you can adjust it by leaning the poles or bringing the string up and down, the rope up and down the front of the poles to make it lower. Not a lot of headroom in here, so what I do for that, use a paddle or another sapling. You could do the same system I did on the front two corners here and tie a rope off the middle, up and back, just so the paddle's not in the way, but it's really not necessary. And when you don't have a tree to tie that to, you know, maybe if you're staying stationary for a long time, but this works just fine. If you're worried about it slipping out and stuff, you can put a little rock here. All right, so 8 times out of 10, that tarp setup is going to work for you and it's gonna hold. It's gonna get you out of the rain. It'll handle a decent amount of wind, but sometimes when the wind is super strong, you need to reinforce it. So in that case, what do? So I'm gonna show you how to do that here. It's relatively simple. Once you've done the front, the hard part's already done. So this, you're just going to paracord or whatever to the front here. Get down, tied around some boulders or heavy object here, and to keep the wind from catching the tarp and lifting it and really sailing it. And that's sometimes what can do it, because it sort of lifts. It can actually lift up on all the things down. You know, as we know, wind, you can sail around the world with wind. So it can be quite strong without even that strong of a wind. So to keep this more aerodynamic, keep the corners down, it sheds water better too. Cinch that up. Tie that off there. So now we've got it reinforced here, down, and over there, and this is a lot more solid, and when I do the other side, it'll pull it even tighter. So now this is quite solid. I've got it tied down there to deflect the wind, and the same on the other side. Way more tight with everything. You're gonna have a pretty strong wind now to get rid of this. And there's one more thing I'm gonna do in the back, is sometimes the wind can lift up on your paddle. If the tarp does lift, the paddle can slide out. So I'll show you how to keep that paddle in place a lot better. So just tied a bit here. You could come up to another sapling and down, but I'm gonna wrap it around the paddle like this. This kind of situation, I like to tie a trucker's hitch, where I'm not going to be like moving the log or the rock to tighten it. So essentially that's just, you just go like that and pull a loop through it like that. So you just have a loop, and then you bring this other tag end up and you put it through. Then you can cinch everything as to your desired tightness like that. Just tie it off. You're good. So now that paddle in there is freaking rock solid too, and the way it's wrapped around the tarp, it's not going anywhere. That's how you set up a tarp. No trees, exactly how you want it, on rocks, wherever you want it. And reinforce it too. We had really strong winds last night and it hasn't gone anywhere. So that's how to reinforce it if need be. You know, you could even go further than this if you needed to, but hasn't been needed. One of the other things that's good about setting up a tarp is usually when you put up a tarp or put on rain gear, it gives you at least a 50% chance that whatever rain was going to come won't come anymore because you've done all that work. So it's a defender against the rain in the way that, you know, it'll just won't rain at all as well. You know, and of course, if you're in an area that doesn't have saplings, you just use, if you're canoeing, you use paddles. Or if you're like backpacking or something, in that case, you'd have to have brought some poles with you. If you were up on a high mountain range or in the Arctic, high Arctic, where there's no trees, you'd have to get creative in that case. But you know, now we can sit right here and cook right in front of the fire. If we needed to have the fire under the tarp for small cooking, we could just bring a little fire under here or move the tarp forward a little bit. You can have a big fire in front that reflects heat back under the tarp. It's actually warmer under there than if you didn't have a tarp, and it's a good setup. One of the other things I really like about this is drying clothes. You can tie a line from the two saplings right here, right in front, and you can dry your clothes here while you sit back. So it's a pretty good thing to know. And it's not, sometimes it's actually less complicated because there's not always trees perfectly where you want them to be. And then sometimes you have to have a ton of cordage to stretch the tree you need, which cuts all the way across your campsite, and people are getting their necks stuck on it, or they walk into it by mistake at night and pulls the whole tarp down or whatever.